should be live. Quick copy of the link. Place it. Discourse. Okay. Alrighty, so hello to all of you watching right now. We are going to be doing a response to a pretty regular viewer. And I think a pretty decent, who also tries to just enter the dialogue and ask questions. We don't agree on everything, but I'm glad that they threw in their questions, and they did ask some questions that I do think need clarifying on. Oh, apologize for the dog. It's probably just barking across the way. All right then. Hold on. Yeah, they're barking because the dog is barking. All right. Anyway, so yesterday, May 4th, I did a video on the Bryant shooting. And I gave a lot of opinions, very heated, not very free form. Usually how I do these streams. And got some questions. Bruce, common viewer of mine. Again, put in the description. A lot of Bruce is the main person who never watches our comments. But I just want to let anyone watching know, please be respectful. People are just asking questions. There's no hint of me being called racist or bigoted or anything like that. Just questions, and it's all put comment form, so there is no tone, body language, or face really behind that to give greater context. So you know what I mean? I mean, obviously, don't hold back from challenging ideas and even calling ideas bad. But again, respectful. Anyway, here is the thing. So first off is this video. We'll go check that in a moment. So we'll go over that too, this part, the links at the end. But I wanted to respond this because I think these are the better questions to ask, whether or not they may be missing the point. That's this one. So to the first one. Question: are you assuming all progressives are white? All rich liberals are progressive. All progressives are BLM supporters. All BLM supporters are progressives. All BLM supporters are tweeting in vain, in the vein that I give. So that all BLM are doing like a Bree Newsom, who said something really stupid, which is, oh, people have been fighting and using knives for eons, so just let it happen, pretty much. That is the very, very watered down simplification, but essentially that's the message that most people got from it. The answer would be no. Not all rich liberals are progressives. I would say Dem and Tracy is a rich or at least well-off progressive, or not progressive, a liberal. Dem and Tracy, known as AIU, he's actually a liberal that agrees with me on a lot of shit. So yeah, I would also call a lot of other white liberal, I would say, I guess, white liberals Not all white liberals agree with this. Do I assume all progressives are white? No. If I did, then I wouldn't call Bree Newsom a progressive, and she's not white. That one feels a little bit under the belt, but that's okay. Do I think all progressives are BLM supporters? No, but there's a common trend. Just like most conservatives support uh, the right to bear arms, or most conservatives are typically Christian and all these other things like that. Um, it does follow with that. Now, if I were to say that all these groups are one and the same and interchangeable, and if it did come off that way, I do apologize. But I tried using BLM, progressives, all of that in the same thing. And I think I even said these rich white liberals that are pseudo progressives. At the end of my video, I made a point that a lot of the rich white people that kind of parrot these positions, especially especially when it comes to celebrities, or CEOs, corporate heads, theirs comes off a lot more sycophantic and a lot more patronizing. So to expand on what I mean by that, when I hear like a CEO, again, this is an example, I'm not saying that's happened. But let's say the CEO of a corporation like Disney comes out and says something like, "Oh, this is a tragedy. We don't need police," or something similar to what Bree Newsom said. Or take a look at what LeBron James did. That comes off as sycophantic. It comes off as, what are you talking about? You are not the average person dealing with this. You are living in your own bubble. Please come up with something more substantial. Because it comes off kind of in the same way you could say, well, what do I know about this? I'm not black. Yeah, but as I established, I grew up poor and middle class, a similar situation to what we see there. It's a middle class neighborhood, obviously, at least by the housing. Seems like a middle class neighborhood. And growing up in that too, I explained how I had a lot of that kind of shit happen when I was growing up. Even still, where family just gets into fights randomly, people try to fight each other in the middle of the street stupidly. And when I called it, it was trashy. Because it is. It's trashy as a human being have fights like that in the open street for over what? Someone coming to yell at your grandma, or someone having a disagreement? Was that disagreement worth stabbing someone over? That's the question. That's trashy. Doesn't matter what your race is. And that's why I brought up my whole upbringing, because I'm white and people will be like, "Oh, well, trashy is a racist term," or whatever. But no. Not all BLM supporters, I'm sure, agree with that. Some of them do. Sadly, I'm pretty sure the silent, I'll even say this, I would bet money on that the silent majority of BLM supporters are probably more in line that it's a tragedy that she died, but are glad that the other two women survived. Because they probably would agree with me. Had the officer not been there, they both probably would have been seriously injured or killed. But no, no, I don't see them all as one and the same, but they are all grouped together, and there is a shit ton of overlap. Just like there's a shit ton of overlap with conservatives and libertarians and certain things, or a shit ton of overlap with conservatives and conservative Christians, in America, all sorts of different things. So if it came off like I was either making assumptions or putting words in people's mouths, that I apologize for. But I do think it kind of misses the point of what I'm getting at. And I guess we'll expand on that a little bit too. When I say showing the progressive hand, what I'm talking about is the common progressive talking. That is a big representative of every progressive friend I have parroted that type of rhetoric. That, well, knife stabbing happen all the time. White people shouldn't be involved. White police are bad. This person died because of racism. white cops shouldn't be showing up. They racialized it. So if they're racializing it, and again, BLM protesters, they started a protest about it. And again, people can protest what they want. This is America. There should be more protests, actual protests, not riots, protests. Like they did have demonstrations, vigils. I hope there was a vigil for her, because even though she made the decision that cost her her life, it still cost her life. And I do feel for everyone who is in her life that's affected by it. Just like I feel for every other person who survived that situation. All the cops who had to respond, including the officer who had to pull the trigger. What upsets me, and even though I came off very unclear-headed probably, I was a bit aggressive, not quite frothing at the mouth, it seems that in their anger and in their clouded emotional state, people wanted to make excuses, and people wanted to hate the cop and be blind to the fact that it's very likely that it was essentially a trade of one life for two. And it was in a 10-second situation. you can't expect someone to make the perfect decision like that in 10 seconds, even with years of training. Hesitation could have cost a life. Look at the clean cars, neat sidewalk, trim grass. This is not a poor area. Yeah, no, I said that. I didn't say AstroTurf, but I said, yeah, it looks like a nice area. What's going on? It's obviously not poor people coming in. It's a fight that happened. And again, it does happen in middle class areas, but it's trashy. Why are you doing this? Why? What is the issue? It wasn't like this is some, street corner in a bad commercial district. This is someone's home in a nice area. These are people who seem to be decently off, making a decent living. Why did the violence come out? You wouldn't expect the typical things. It wasn't a typical crime situation. It was people getting into a fight and then hurting each other. That doesn't necessarily play into it, but I did bring it up. We have no idea what is going on. Two of the physically could see the cop had his gun out, wanted control, had escalated to potential lethal force, and he was pointing the gun at the woman who was shot. So we have no idea what was going on. True. The cop didn't either. The cop goes into the situation and then sees someone with a knife charge and knock over a woman, and then turn around and go for another woman with a knife. The cop's going to respond. The reason the cop pulled the gun out, he pulls the gun out as Micaiah went for the first person, the woman that I think I mistakenly said was elderly. She wasn't. Turns out she was pretty young. Seems may have also been a teenager. So seeing that, he pulled out his gun. The LEO, the law enforcement officer, did not identify armed police. Did not specify. So you don't have to say armed police. You don't. You don't have to walk in and say armed police. So in the United States, as opposed to the UK, it's implied you're armed police. That's just a difference, And I understand. Two different nations. Did not shout, everyone step back and stand up. Shut up shouting. You, one in the black, facing the one in the pink, back off. He actually did make some commands and then just opened fire. That's a lot to say in one moment, especially when someone is just going for someone with a knife. Those kind of situations. I mean, the sentence I just read, we could time it, see how fast I can say it. Get a timer here. Oops. Stopwatch. All right, let's do a stopwatch. Whoa. Put up higher. And everyone, step back and stand down and shut up. You, the one in the black, facing the one in the pink. Back off. 6 seconds. So 4 seconds into it, would have need to have said that. Now again, that's 10 seconds from arrival to shooting. So if he started saying that, is because the actual shooting happened in the last 2 seconds. How he started saying that should have been had a lethal. And I'll get into this later. A lethal knife wound in the neck. And if it wasn't lethal, he's definitely gonna be suffering from something. Alrighty, 5. The citizens, including the chap at the extreme left in the road bystander recording, seem to have no idea about how to behave when cops are called. Yeah, no one does. Oh, thank you, Roscoe. No one has no idea how to behave when cops are called, because there isn't necessarily a standard behavior. God, there isn't necessarily a standard behavior. Cops would say you need to comply, but what is compliance? Is it doing what? Now, in other body cam footage, the woman who got knocked over, the one who I mistakenly said was elderly, she had her hands up after the shooting happened. She ended up being taken into a car, as well as the woman at pink, because they were suspects. And they were also the 2 targets of violence. So it's better to put them in a cop car and have cops around there to protect them in case something else is attempted, in case of any further retaliation by them or towards them. But yeah, no. The biggest thing is the dipshit who, again, I call him Captain Dumbass, Micaiah's father, or whoever, said that, oh, you killed my baby. They're the one who has the least idea of how to act around police. Next to Micaiah. Micaiah sees a cop, has a knife, instead of dropping the knife or folding it and putting it away, or setting it on a car, or even just going back into the house to hide it, decides to take it and attack one woman and then go at another in front of a cop, while Captain Dumbass tries to curb stomp this woman several times. Kick and curb stomp and hit. So, yeah. They don't know. That's what got them killed. When someone who is trained and compelled to react to that situation is there and has the means to act, don't further escalate it yourself. Because here's the thing. The cop actually de-escalated the situation. With the use of lethal force, the entire situation came to a screeching halt. Micaiah is the one who escalated it to a knife fight. Or rather, an attempted stabbing. Hold on 1 second. Let me do this. But anyway, value, standards, priorities. All cops are permitted honest errors. I wouldn't call this an error. For the first, that was the worst this cop could be suspected of. An error should be suspended on full pay pending investigation. Yeah, there should be investigation in that. Should be suspended. I understand where you're coming from here. Yeah, it should be looked into, and then potentially based off what was done wrong, if should have been there. The only thing you could have said maybe is if he should have gone for his taser, which based off pictures I've seen, their taser was actually because tasers can be held in a few ways. I'm gonna stand up because I need to do it for myself. Um, it's on the left side, not where their handgun is, but on the left side in the front, to like the left of where a belt buckle typically would be. He could have gone for his taser to pull out first, which would still present a similar issue. The only thing is, a taser would not have stopped the stabbing. It's not as guaranteed. Tasers need to not hit clothing, and she was wearing semi-loose clothes. She had jeans on and a like a cami type shirt, or like a not a cami. What is it? The round sleeves that women wear. Um, so it may not have worked. It may have not gone in deep enough. It may not have sent a charge. It's not like with a gun where unless you just have a misfire or rather a round, just a dud round, you're gonna fire. Um, and being shot is typically going to stop you unless you are just in a bad state. Three, system potentially institutionally racist as culture of de-escalation. So it's not institutionally racist. I don't know what you mean by that. I wouldn't say it is. The cop showed up to a situation to de-escalate, and lethal force, lethal harm was threatened, and then acted on. So someone attempted to lethally stab someone. Whether or not that person would have died, we don't know. Just like you don't know if you'll die from a gunshot. Several people survive gunshot wounds. Not as often as knives, but pretty often too. So we don't know. It's not racist to do that. If this cop was racist, he wouldn't have just shot Micaiah. He would have shot everyone there. Because he's a racist. And that's why I get like that. See, the smug attitude comes out because when someone says it's racism, no, and then institutional racism is a bullshit fucking concept. Granted, yeah, back in the 60s, 70s, maybe, and then definitely carrying a bit into the 80s and 90s, that was there, but that got phased out real fucking quick by my generation. My generation doesn't have that anymore. The institutional racism isn't there. If the institutional racism was there, Chauvin wouldn't be in prison. If the institutional racism was there, this cop would have been deemed a hero by the entirety of the country. This cop would not be potentially facing losing their job. Several cops would not have lost their jobs or their lives if it was institutional racism. The institutions, the racial institutions we have now are social. We have social racist institutions in things like Breen Newsom. Then we should defund the police and tell white cops to get out of here. They're racist because they only care when someone dies by police shootings, but they don't give a single fuck when potentially 2 women could have died that day had the cop not been there. And if they hadn't died, they would have faced severe bodily harm. No, that's fine. They didn't die. They're only traumatized for the rest of their life. They only have extreme medical bills. They only potentially may have to face extreme debilitating disabilities because of their injury. You only got maimed. You only got maimed. Shut up, you're still alive. Yeah, way to minimize violence. That's what that comes up. That's where my anger comes from. That's where my frustration comes from. That's why I say it shows the progressive hand, because many progressives parrot this talking point. It's common. Just like many conservatives say this, a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun. Correct? Most conservatives say that, right? Yeah. Does it make it true? Not entirely. Is it an annoying talking point? Yes. Does it miss the point? Yes. Is there a better solution? Yes. Same with this. It's the same thing you hear too when people say things like, oh, violent video games and drugs and music all no. It's looking for a scapegoat for a problem. What's the problem? Micaiah made a bad decision. She chose to escalate to violence with a lethal weapon, and someone acted upon it. That's what happened. Cops are there to report crime, arrest criminals, investigate, and to protect lives. The cops saved 2 at the cost of 1, unfortunately. They immediately performed CPR on her afterward. It was not like they didn't try saving her. Options the cop had: do nothing until you know the facts. Yeah, just sit there and let the person get stabbed. That's fucking brilliant. That's fucking brilliant. Yeah, just sit there. Oh. Well, she has a knife, but I don't know if that's going to be a lethal. Let me watch. Oh, that's her jugular. Oh, she's... Oh, and now she's stabbing this woman right next to me. While she's getting curb stomped by her... by the alleged father. Or whatever. Boyfriend, whatever he is. Oh. I don't have the facts yet. That's what that comes off as. What are you saying? Get the facts in 10 seconds? What are you talking? That's not how this works. And this is what pisses me off. That's not how the real world works. The real world isn't everybody gets to break down, pause for a moment. It's not a video game. Life isn't a video game. You don't get to restart and do stuff like that. You have to make split decisions. You have to go with what's in front of you, what's in there, what's implied. Excuse me. Sometimes people make the wrong decision, people get the wrong information, people read the information incorrectly. That all happens. Human error is a big thing. But this is cut and dry. A person is assaulting another person with a deadly weapon. How fucking obvious can that not be? Again, I'm frustrated and angered by this because it is so obvious. Now, I understand. People who have the other view are like, well, I'm so frustrated and angered because it's so obvious. A young woman died. I agree. It is fucking tragic a young woman died. You're not the only person to know a young woman who's died. However, it's a situation where the cop had to choose. Do I let this person harm and kill that person knowingly, or do I take action? What action do I take? My gun is out. Why? Because I saw a lethal weapon. Whenever a lethal weapon is out, cops will typically draw their firearm. Their trained response. Why? Because in 10 seconds, someone can die. See, this is what upsets me too. This is the irony of some of this. And again, I understand these are just questions. Bruce, I'm not trying to be a dick. Apologize if it comes off that way. But that's how it comes off from that perspective. It comes off as expecting these... It's like you're expecting this cop to be RoboCop. To have a supercomputer style of thinking, to analyze everything, and then to make perfect shots that disable the situation but don't cause any harm. How the fuck would you do that? What, shoot for the arm? Shoot for the leg? If you try to shoot for the arm while someone's stabbing, the arm is a much smaller target right in front of a big target that you could hurt. The woman in pink. Go for the leg. Well, if you shoot in the leg and you potentially shoot in the wrong spot, you might shoot the femoral artery. You could kill them there. Cops are trained to shoot center mass, just like anyone else is trained to shoot center mass. Anyone's been trained to use a firearm is trained to shoot center mass, whether that's with a rifle, a shotgun, a handgun, whatever. Should police not carry guns? Is that what you're saying? That's a different discussion we could have. But this situation would have turned out much worse, by my assessment, and by law enforcement assessment, and by many other people's assessment. So now we're just trading lives, which is something that no one, and this is what I know Bruce, you agree with me on this, no one wants that to happen. Don't want to trade lives. It's unfortunate that it came down to that. I wish there was a way that this cop could have just thrown a fucking lasso of truth and pulled her back. That'd be perfect. But we don't have Wonder Woman. Sorry. We're humans. We're not gods from other islands or other planets. We're not superheroes. We're people. Intervene with sublethal force, nightstick. No. No cop is ever going to use a nightstick on a black person in the United States ever again. After what was done by the LAPD, you will never see that happen. And what do you think the optics of that are going to be? A cop beating. So here's the thing too, and this is where I think a lot of people just don't really understand kind of this. It's like they're removing themselves too far in a way that doesn't help the situation. What would have been done if they had used a nightstick? Okay, well, you try beating on someone who doesn't want to stop trying to kill someone. See what happens. Take a nightstick to them. But further, and this is the thing, this is a shit situation no matter what the cop did. Had the cop use a taser, nightstick, fucking gun, his fists, this would have been bad. Why? She's 16. Here's the other problem. A knife is a close quarter weapon. It only really, unless you're able to throw it, but I mean, this isn't a video game. Most people don't know how to throw knives for shit. Including me. Getting into close quarter with someone like that increases great bodily harm to you without being effective. The cop not only has to de-escalate the situation, they also need to take control of the situation. And by going into a melee brawl with a less effective means of defense, such as a billy club, against someone with a knife who does not care, they have proven, this is the thing, they have the language without speaking, the language of the situation, the implications of the situation are, this person gives no fuck that a cop is here, that we are fighting in broad daylight, outside on public property, in front of all the neighborhood. She gives no fuck. She is willing to kill someone in broad daylight. Or at least cause severe bodily harm. Which means she's willing to kill someone. Whether you're like, oh, I'm just going to stab her just to really hurt her. You know stabbing can lead to death. She made that choice. The cop going into close quarter fight is now putting the cop's life needlessly at risk. And if the cops get injured, or if the cop gets into a physical fight with her, you bet your fucking ass that dipshit Captain Dumbass, that's my baby, would have fucking jumped in. And I'm going to keep railing that guy. Why? Because I blame him for this. If he's her father, he should have taught her better. He should have taught her how to not come at someone with a fucking knife. Okay? This isn't fucking prison or fucking Mad Max Wasteland. Alright? It's a fucking it's a nice neighborhood. That's why I brought that up. It's a nice neighborhood. You would expect to come in here and people be a lot more welcoming. And if there is a fight, neighbors come in and help, cop shows up, stops it. No, they're acting like it's just fucking Demolition Man, LA. You know what I mean? And you bet he would have interviewed. Now it's a 2v1 with someone with a stabbing weapon. And who knows who else would have gone in there? And what are you expecting the cop to know who's on what side? All they can tell is that 2 people are assaulting 2 other people and one of them has a deadly weapon. And again, 10 seconds. 10 seconds is really only a long time as a bull rider. About it. Do me a favor. Go out and walk into a situation. Start at 10 seconds. Let it escalate to someone having lethal force and let me know what happens. Let me know. Good luck. Say I'm recording this. I see multiple violent crimes in progress. Okay, yeah, but now you're just doing the bystander thing. They don't care. Here's the thing: if you're telling someone, it's the same thing as being like, "Hey, stop doing drugs. It's illegal. Stop having illegal firearms. It's illegal. Stop committing prostitution. It's illegal. Stop gambling. It's illegal." They don't give a shit. Someone committing an illegal act does not give a shit about the fact that it's an illegal act unless they are unwilling, unknowing. But everyone with a fucking brainstem knows that if you're going after someone with a knife, it is illegal. It is assault with a deadly weapon that gets you behind bars, even if you're 16, and that potentially gets you killed, even if a cop isn't there. Fuck. You know what would have been funny if fucking the pink woman's dad had been there and stepped in and intervened instead? What would have been the story then? What's the difference? Other than maybe they didn't have a gun. But if they would have got in and let their hands on there, you bet your fucking ass that Captain Dumbass fucking my baby would have stepped in. And it would have just been a brawl and more violence and more people with more and more bodily harm caused. We may have not had just one unfortunate death, but several. Fire shot in the air. Okay. I'm letting that one slide because you're British. I'm letting that one slide because you're British. You never fire a gun in the air. What goes up must come down. That is how people get killed. That is irresponsible. That's actually illegal in the United States. You wouldn't believe it, especially in Texas, but it is. Because it's irresponsible. We're now promoting, and that's what I get frustrated. It's, and again, I mean this is no disrespect. I said because you're British, because you guys outlawed firearms. I know that you're old enough to have been around, I think, before, but that's irresponsible. I mean, again, I also give you the credit because not recommended. Don't. But rationally, the best was probably one, don't do anything. Allow the assault to continue. That's the other thing, too. Most stabbings are not fatal. True, because most stabbings are not allowed to continue. That makes sense. Usually a stabbing is stopped in one way or another. If a stabbing's allowed to continue, people die. And not only that, the stabbing wasn't just going for the gut or the side, where it's non-lethal. If you get stabbed, below the sternum, not below this, just below the rib cage, in the side, even into the rib cage a little bit, depending on how big you are, probably not gonna be fatal. You get stabbed sternum up, unless you hit bone and it bounces off, you've got a higher likelihood of dying. Vital organs, vital arteries. And that stab was going for the neck. How do people die a lot? What's the one way with a knife you guarantee they die? Slitting their throat? Why is that? Why is that? What was she going for? She was going for the neck. She was coming up and over, even though the person was fighting her off. She was trying to go up and over into the neck. Yeah, she may have gotten into the shoulder, but that still can be lethal. You still can bleed out from that. Going into the shoulder, into like the trap in between the collarbone and that's still potentially lethal. Very painful. Allow someone to receive bodily harm. Then kill her? So now the cop has, and that's the thing, this is the thing I really get pissed off. There's no winning situation for the cop in this. That's what I'm trying to get at too. There's no winning situation for the cop in this, because no matter what the cop did, all these Monday morning quarterback motherfuckers are gonna say shit like Bree Newsom did and have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. The cop did, and I'm gonna say this, you're not gonna like it, the cop did the best thing they could have. It's unfortunate someone had to die. perhaps Micaiah, or sorry, Micaiah, should have not made the decision to attempt to take someone else's life. Because a stab at someone's neck is an attempt to take someone's life. I don't give a shit. That's attempted assault and attempted murder. If she were in court, she would be being held for attempted murder. She'd be tried as an adult, and she'd be spending several years, if not her entire life, in prison. Maybe not as much because she's a woman. Women, especially a teenage woman, they're given a lot more leniency. But her being black, and this is something I'll admit, her being black may have hurt her in that case. I'll extend that olive branch for fucking sure. And you know what? It may have also hurt her case because the jury probably would have been black, and they would have seen one black woman attacking another black woman. Might have been offended by that. Probably might have been harsher on her. We don't know. That's the unfortunate thing. It would have been nice, but she chose to attempt murder. When you attempt murder in front of someone who is compelled to act, they will use lethal force. Let me change this up too to maybe illustrate it a bit better. Let's say this wasn't a knife. Let's say it was a gun or a bomb. Something else. Should they have just let it happen? Should we allow crimes we see as they are going to complete? Should we allow the bomber to actually bomb instead of stopping them before they pull the trigger? Should we allow the gunmen to fire on people? Or should we stop them because they presented the gun and look like they are aiming it at people? I'm very much against preventive law. Shouldn't ban knives for this. Shouldn't ban guns or police for this. But there's a big difference between saying, oh, well, we shouldn't ban knives because you're punishing everyone for that. For the crimes of a few. We shouldn't be preemptively stopping crime. And we shouldn't stop crime from escalating. Because here's the thing. The moment she pulled out the knife and went for the one woman, already committing a crime. Then she goes for the other woman, pulls the knife back, leans into her. That's called assault and battery. And then the swinging forward, as soon as the knife goes from back to forward, that is now attempted murder. That's assault and attempted murder. Had the gun not been fired, it may have escalated to murder. This is a frustration I have. Because what it seems like is people are not recognizing the reality of the situation. And instead expecting some idealistic, special fairyland logic to happen. And yeah, it is illogical and unreasonable. And maybe that's why you ask these questions. If that's so, thanks for asking so I could expand. But most experienced officers would actually agree with me. Not just the ones that appear on Fox News or whatever conservative thing people listen to or watch or read. But most law enforcement officers, neutral, even somewhat left-leaning. In that situation, you have to make a decision. You use your taser, you may or may not really do what you're supposed to do. Your chances of stopping someone are way less. Okie dokie. Oh gosh, that is so much better. What the fuck? Okie dokie. Well, it looks like we're actually finally getting some. Hold on, guys. Sorry about the background loop you might get here. What is going on? If we get any. Why is it playing? Alright. So here's the thing. I have no problem with people claiming racism, necessarily. What I have a problem with, well, I mean, I have a problem when people claim racism when it's not there. Because what they're doing is trying to mask, or at least whether it's willingly, unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly, they're masking the situation. They are covering up the problem. It's a blanket of racism to cover a mess that is not racism. And trying to wrap it all up in this big blanket of racism and throw it out. But the big blanket of racism has holes, leaks. Because it doesn't clean the mess. That's why it doesn't clean the mess properly. It rips and tears when you try to pick it up, and the mess spills back out and hasn't changed. You'll notice this. If it is racism and all these things that have changed since then, body cams have actually shown situations like this where it is cut and dry that what happened was pretty much what would happen. The proper escalation. Fortunate, but it's a proper escalation. And people still are saying it's racism and white cops shouldn't be involved and all that stuff like that. Get over myself? I think they need to get over themselves. People who want to spend their whole life focused on their race as if it's the entirety of their identity need to get the fuck over themselves. Most people don't care about race. I don't care about race. I don't care what skin color you have. What I care about is your opinion, what you think, and most importantly, why and how. The reasoning and logic behind what you think. And when someone says, oh, it's racism, what that implies is the person is stupid to me. Because they aren't looking at this objectively. They aren't looking at this realistically. They are taking their own, which everyone takes their own biases, but they have wrapped up their own perspective into this giant racial filter that then just pretty much doesn't allow any new information to come through. And it doesn't allow them to see reality. It's this giant distortion. That's what's upsetting to me. And that's what's annoying to me. But excuse me for calling people out. I mean, this is shit I've been doing for a long time, for all different groups, for all different things. Whether it's people who are focused on race, religion, sex, gender identity, whatever. Nationality. It's pathetic and stupid to live your life based off that kind of stuff. You're a human being. And yeah. The big issue with people claiming racism too is that people are buying into it. When media sources and celebrities that people follow on Instagram, because people are fucking stupid, end up saying, oh, this is a racism issue, this is a race issue, this is a race issue, this is a race issue. Well, you're creating a narrative. And while, again, people should be smart enough to research shit for themselves, to watch body cam footage, not CNN or Fox or whoever the fuck's interpretation of the body cam footage, maybe it's going to be annoying, because I hear just parroted talking. It's kind of like, you know, when people get their news just from Ben Shapiro, and they say a lot of the Ben Shapiro talking points, those smarmy, annoying shit, like facts don't care about your feelings, shit like that. It's annoying, stupid, and just soul dragging because you know it's wrong, but you know where they got the source from. It's a parroted point, and it's just disgusting because it shows you this person doesn't research for themselves. They just listen to what other people tell them. That's why. But no, I'll get over myself. I want to know though, what should I be, why should I not be upset about people calling racism? And what should I be upset about then? I'm upset that people are stupid and don't recognize the situation for what it is. That's what I'm mostly upset about. That people are turning this into something, and if they're mad that it's a teenager that died, well, the teenager committed a act, and they're 16. It's not like this is some 13-year-old that walked out and had a fucking pocket knife and got shot in their backyard. You'd have a fucking point if that was it. No, this is a fucking assault with a deadly weapon. So now I'll get over myself. And again, that comes off as so pretentious and just completely dismissing of what happened. Last thing I want to go over before we go over all the links, and again, I appreciate all the links provided. One possible death versus another certain death. No, both were possible deaths. Being shot center mass doesn't mean you're going to die. In fact, she was alive for quite a bit of that until she died. It's unfortunate. It means she experienced the pain of a gunshot wound. Several. And I feel bad for her. I feel bad that she probably died scared and in pain. That is sad and tragic and heartbreaking. I feel bad for the father for having to watch his daughter die. And if that was her mother there too, or any family or friends there, I feel bad for everyone involved having to watch someone die in front of them, especially not even an adult yet, someone so young who should have their life to look forward to. However, what's funny, we can apply empathy to someone, to Micaiah, but we cannot apply any sort of empathy or sympathy or like just brain power to the fact that Micaiah had no empathy or sympathy for the woman in pink she tried to kill, or the woman she knocked down, that again mistakenly called elder. Fuck them. Their lives don't matter. Only Micaiah. That's interesting to me, because that shows it's not about the fact that a loss of life happened. It's not about black lives being ended. It's all for show. It's all sycophantic. It's all fake. Not fake news. It's fake sympathy. Fake empathy. That's what it comes off as. Pretending. Because it's like, oh, I'm a good white person. Oh, I'm a good progressive. I care about black lives. No, you don't. I'm not saying you specifically. This is a generalization. And this is a generalization with the caveat that not all, of course. Again, I would say that the silent majority probably feels very differently. I'd love to hear what the silent majority has to say. Sadly, they're the silent majority. They're not going to speak up. I can only hear what they have to say if I bring up this topic in front of someone, and it just happens to be someone who feels that way. And here's the thing. Until I focus on a woman, the woman is dead. Oh, we lost our thing there. Go back to it. Oh, wrong one. Back. All right. This last part. Until you focus on a woman is dead, I'd say BLM have a point. No, they don't. They don't have a point. A woman is dead. 2 women nearly died. See, here's the thing. People just want to look at the outcome. They don't want to look at the lead up. And I'm not surprised. Shooting in defense of themselves or others is definitely something that progressives and BLM, any other people who identify with the quote-unquote left, don't seem to fucking grasp. They seem to think it's okay to be an assaulter until certain situations, which again shows a severe capacity for hypocrisy, greater than the typical average human. But and again, and I know, I'm pretty sure Bruce knows that we're not just talking to, look, I'm not coming at this as, well, one, I don't consider myself a conservative, but this isn't just a, some Steven Crowder bro boy being like, yeah, you know what I mean? I'm calling out the hypocrisy of a group that doesn't want to recognize what happened and doesn't want to actually look at the facts of the situation. The facts that are obvious in 10 seconds that I've gone over several times. Again, it's tragic that Micaiah died. Undescribably. Repeating it over and over will not do the justice, or not do justice for the tragedy that is her loss of life. And how? But to not recognize that, to not only not recognize that she attempted murder and assaulted someone else, not just one but two, but to also not recognize that this shooting prevented extreme bodily harm and potential death to not just one person but potentially two. That to me, and then not only that, to then justify it saying, well, people just get in knife fights all the time, it's fine. That's disgusting to me. That's like saying when so let me put this in perspective here in a way that maybe might make some more fucking sense. So let's say that a bunch of good old boys down south decide to lynch someone or just, be violent. Oh, they're Southern though. Southerners have been violent, lynching people all the fucking time. They've been doing it for eons. Let it go. I got a better one. Human beings have been engaging in slavery for several thousand years. It's not a problem. Does it make sense now? Does it get through? Does it get through? Just because a gun and a death by firearm is more, obviously more violent, a bit more guaranteed, doesn't change the fact that someone tried to stab someone. Someone tried to kill someone else. Twice! What that proves to me is the loss of life doesn't matter to these people. They're not upset about the loss of life. They're upset about the optics, or they're feigning upset because they want to look like they give a shit. But they don't. That's what it is. This would be like, so here's the other situation. This is like, this is exactly what happens. This is probably why I take it so personally. I was bullied a shit ton as a kid, right? You may not know this. I was. I stood up to my bullies. Guess who got more punishment? I did, for standing up. I never escalated it to lethal force. All they ever did was just sometimes rough them up more than they expected. They initiated roughing me up first. That is what I see here. You're telling people they cannot defend themselves, that their lives do not matter, that instead criminals and bullies and fucking assholes, no, their lives are more important. Too bad you got assaulted with a knife. Too bad you got stabbed. Too bad you're getting beaten up. Too bad you're getting shot. Take it. Take it. And the cops? No, fuck them. The cops don't get to come save you. And you don't get to have a gun or anything to defend yourself. Fuck you. That's what that comes off as. That's what that comes off as. It's telling me, telling everyone, telling Black Americans that their lives don't matter. That's what that comes off as. And if that's not being able to see, maybe I'm not articulating it enough, or maybe the people who listen are so goddamn fucking dense that they can't understand it. That, or they're willfully ignorant, and if they're willfully ignorant, then I am disgusted by them, and I want nothing to do with them. Someone who is willfully ignorant is a piece of shit. Unless they're a psychopath, they have no excuse to be willfully ignorant. And even if they are a psychopath, it doesn't change the fact it's still disgusting that they're willfully ignorant. But I'll just get over myself. That's what it is. I'm just being self-indulgent. And it's funny, I'm getting all passionate and heated up. Why? Someone died and 2 people almost did. That's what I care about. I don't care their race or how old they were or young or whatever. I care about the situation. You see that situation. What I see is people assaulting 2 other people and then someone stepping up to stop it. Is it unfortunate it had to escalate that way? Yes. Maybe if she didn't have a knife. And here's the thing. If instead she didn't have a knife and was just beating on people, the taser, the billy club, or even just wrestling would have happened. If Micaiah hadn't pulled a knife, she'd still be alive. That's the other truth. The uncomfortable, and I will say this for all you Al Gore fans, inconvenient truth. And that's what it is. The truth is inconvenient for a lot of people. And again, we're not perfect. I don't expect everyone to see things, and I don't expect myself to see everything. That's why I'm doing this response. It's why I welcome all the fucking questions. Why? Because there are some good points in those questions. There are some good questions. There's some good Socratic dialogue leading questions there, and I appreciate that, and that's why I appreciate Bruce. And again, I may be heated. Do not fucking be respectful, please. You know what I mean? Just because I'm heated doesn't mean that people need to be dicks to each other. But it's an inconvenient truth. And I'm sitting here trying to say, look at this inconvenient thing, this fact of the matter. And people are just like, oh, well, a woman died. Yeah, no, I know that. But here's why. But she's dead. That's all that should matter. Well, if she's dead and that's all that should matter, then I guess fuck the woman that nearly died, right? Oh, well, knife wounds aren't lethal. Oh, except to everyone who's ever died by knife wounds, or everyone who has suffered severe life-altering injuries because of knife wounds. Yeah, fuck them. That's what that comes off as. And again, I understand, it's a dialogue. You have to give ground. And I've given quite a bit. But I'm not giving on that. Why? Because it's assault. An attempted murder. And if you're going to say, oh, well, they should have just let the person die. Okay. I guess we're using Zack Snyder logic now. What do I mean? Go watch Man of Steel. It's a joke about fucking... Spoiler alert, there's a part in the Man of Steel movie where young Clark Kent saves some kids and then fucking his father is just like, well, maybe you should have let him die. I don't know. Just let him die? Really? Let him get hurt? And it's the thing, because here's the thing, it's like, oh, well, they may not have died. You're still taking that chance. And if you're willing to take the chance, you're willing to let it happen. Just like him shooting means he was willing to kill her. 100% agreed. You point a gun at someone and open fire, you're willing to kill them. Agreed. In the same way, you pull out a knife and go for someone's throat, you're willing to kill... Do you see what I'm getting at now? I hope that logic kind of flows there. Again, I understand the tragedy, the people protesting, the people holding vigils for her, all that stuff. Completely support their right to do that. I don't agree with everything they say, but I support their right to do that. I feel bad for the grieving families. I hope they can find some peace in this. And they're going to definitely get a lot of money. Because no matter what, that precinct's going to get fucking sued. You bet your ass. So they're going to be set. But again, no amount of money can bring back their daughter. Just like no amount of money could bring back either the other two had the cop just done nothing and let everything continue to escalate. The ignorance of violent crime, the excuse of violent crime is what upsets me. And to me, it shows that it's not it's not about, oh, black people are being oppressed by police. That's not what that was. If that cop wanted to go in and oppress black people, he would have not opened fire on Micaiah. He would have shot her dumbass dad first. Because her dumbass dad was the first person we see committing violence right in front of him, going for a kick. And that kick almost could have been interpreted as towards the officer. That's not what happened. As if he's not racist. And this wasn't race driven. But as if it was based on the fact that someone had a lethal weapon, started using it on someone else. I know I've repeated myself several times. I hope maybe people can understand now. But maybe it's just a pipe dream. Anyway, let's get on to these sexy links.
Oh dear, outside, never mind.
Okay. Funny joke.
These were way harder to destroy than I expected.
I hate commercials.
I think it's become clearer that fairness is overrated. The idea that we should always give two...
Why is Lester... Oh, okay. I was like, what the fuck is Lester Holt doing on Fox? I just like, that is a ship jumping I never expected to see. But I see it now. Sorry. I don't mean to laugh. It's a tragic thing. It just, that caught me off guard.
Two sides, equal weight and merit does not reflect the world we find ourselves in.
NBC now putting those words into practice, the network under fire for deceptively editing the 911 call that preceded a fatal police shooting of a teenage girl in Ohio.
I like this.
Police body cam video shows a Columbus officer shooting 16-year-old Bryant as she was lunging with a knife at another woman.
One
the
assault
part
right
of the
there.
911 call that NBC
Pulls
aired
out a gun.
left
Two.
out the part about the attempted stabbing.
Officer Nicholas Reardon, who joined the force in December of 2019, was responding to a 911 call.
We need a police officer here now.
And here's the actual 911 call.
These grown girls over here trying to fight us, trying to stop us, trying to put her hands on our grandma. Get here now.
Have you seen any weapons? Ma'am, have you seen any weapons?
We need a police officer here now.
Joining me now, Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist, and Joe Concha, the Hill Media opinion columnist. Both are Fox News contributors. Joe and Molly, thanks so much for taking the time to join me tonight.
Great to be here with you.
How are you, Ben?
So I have to ask for your reactions to this situation with NBC. It seems to me that so many of our corporate media entities out there are interested in fomenting racial rage as opposed to actually...
Fox News should definitely not be telling people corporate media just spreads a narrative. Comes off very hypocritical. But anyway, continue.
Depicting the true story about these different events that happen that certainly are concerning, but are not depictions of race-based violence on the part of the cops against various people in America. Molly, what are your thoughts on this?
So much of the privilege that media figures have had has been built on this idea that they take and synthesize information and they provide context and help provide a shared set of facts for the American people. That's not what they're doing anymore. They have moved into straight up propaganda. In this case, it does seem that they are desiring to foment racial division because that aligns with the political goals of their favored party on the left. But they do it in so many ways. I think people need to stop being surprised when they see it happening because it happens with everything, whether it's the Russia collusion hoax or the Kavanaugh hoax or the Covington hoax or deceptively editing Governor Ron DeSantis's answer on vaccine distribution. It's just what they do as a matter of course. And this week we've seen it that they will even do it when it's something as fraught as racial division.
Well, she does have a point again. It's tough to take Fox News saying, "Oh, they have a narrative," and it's like, yes, and so do you. Now, I will give both, quote unquote, both sides this credit. In situations typically where so here's what happens. And this is why I don't consider myself conservative or progressive. I consider myself a liberal, but I don't consider myself on terms with the Republican and Democrat parties in the States, nor do I consider myself in with Labor and conservative. Or is it Labor and liberal? I don't know what it is over in the UK. I apologize. Correct me, please, if possible. But I don't consider myself in that right-left thing because it creates this false binary. And the ironic thing that always ends up happening is something like this happens. One of two things happen. Either one side spins a narrative and the other side then comes out with the majority of the truth. You know, an objective, I guess not the truth, but comes out with objective facts and just tries to do normal reporting. Or what usually happens and is far worse is you end up getting a narrative war, and the actual facts of the matter are not presented cleanly or as clean and objectively as possible. What ends up happening is both these sides just end up saying, well, you guys are propaganda. No, you guys are propaganda. No, you guys are propaganda. No, you guys are propaganda. And the truth of the matter never comes out, and everyone just hates each other based off false information or distorted information. So, yeah, that's why I don't really tolerate Fox News. I consider Fox and a lot of other things conservative media in the same light. It's the same reason why I view InfoWars and like things like that, Breitbart and what's it called, Grudge, the same as like the Young Turks, because they are. The only difference is the Young Turks has a bit more money, but they're both extremely politically biased, but are alternate versions under the same camp. Because push comes to shove, InfoWars is voting for the conservative, and the Young Turks are voting for the liberal. During like midterm elections or things like that, they'll pretend that they are trying to vote for alternate candidates, but they still are in the same system, in the same party, in the same things. They just serve two factions that are just split into smaller factions that come together in the end, and they all spew and digest and just regurgitate the same propaganda from both sides. So the irony is not lost on me.
Joe, I think that this is a situation that unfortunately doesn't seem like it has any real solution. Is there a way to get these media entities to start behaving more responsibly?
And what upsets me too, and you could accuse me of this, and I would understand that criticism, and I would say that while you have a point, it's more of me being upset that people are. So what's upsetting is these people are essentially using a dead corpse to promote propaganda, which is what they're also accusing another group of doing, which both sides are doing. But here's what's going on. One side is reporting, so CNN or MS, whoever it was that Lester Holt's on, they cut out information to sell a narrative. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. I'm not going to guarantee he's going to stop barking. But what essentially happened is a narrative was sold, and then while calling out, they end up selling their own narrative. They're using it to say, see, they're just propagandists, and they don't know what they're saying. You could accuse me of doing that again, using a tragedy to push a narrative, and then using a tragedy to push a narrative in response. And I mean, I guess I can't necessarily argue, because deep down that's essentially what I'm doing. I am responding, pointing out a fact based off of that. So I mean, I guess it's a fair assessment. Sure, I'll take that. I'll take that criticism if that comes out. But I'm not using it to say that one side only propagandizes and another doesn't. What I'm doing is calling out the hypocrisy of one side, of a specific group that is in a, we call it a political scuffle with several other groups, and several groups that align themselves together, like BLM and just the progressive movement in general, and you know, all these other different groups too. So
and not, you know, trying to push this toxic, racist approach to every frame of every story.
Then they got to be called out, but they got to be called out by their own. I want to see the op-eds in the New York Times, in the Washington Post, by CNN, people they don't expect to criticize them, NBC in this case, because that's the only way you're really going to get their attention. You mentioned about how the media is serving to divide the country further. Oh yeah, Gallup had a poll last year. 83% of Americans believe that the media bears the blame for division in this country. Think about that for a second.
That would include Fox News.
1976, media had a 72% approval rating in the Cronkite era. So today, NBC had to put out a statement to apologize for not issuing that full 911 call, because that's the real context when you hear a girl pleading.
And good for them. Good for them for saying, hey, sorry we didn't do, or NBC, sorry, we didn't provide the full context. Here's the full context. Good for them for being honest in the end. I give credit for that.
He's trying to stab us, or when they actually edited out the knife in the hand of the attacker in the original report.
Well, I don't think they did that. That's a lot harder than you think.
We should have seen apologies. We should have seen retractions. We saw nothing. All we saw was punditry on places like MSNBC, which seemed to actually justify knife fights going on between kids. This was a one-way knife fight, A. And B, there was actually a 13-year-old girl in Cincinnati that was stabbed to death by another 13-year-old. This isn't playtime now, and this is a very serious situation that we have here in terms of...
Yeah, so that's what... So essentially, that tweet trivializes knife violence. That's essentially what, so what's ironic is when that happens, it's what they essentially accuse conservatives or people who are pro-gun of doing, trivializing gun violence. That's a big part of the frustration, a big part of my point. Trivializing violence. You're trivializing violence at the same time blowing up violence. You're saying, like, this is a violent act and it's terrible. Oh, that violence? That's okay. That happens. Let them do it. It's just playtime. No, this isn't bitey face between dogs who know when to push each other's limits and know when to stop. This is someone trying to kill someone else. It's not play wrestle.
Of police and race, and tensions are high. NBC had to get it right.
Also, the whole point about bringing that up, though, it is another thing, something Devin Tracy says. Bringing up the 13-year-old stabbing another 13-year-old, it's kind of a non sequitur-ish. It's still related, but it's not as relevant. It's just like, oh yeah, well, another person got killed, you know, and it's like, okay, it's not as, it should have been presented a bit better, you know. I think instead of saying, it's like, well no, knives aren't playtime. Here's an example of a 13-year-old being killed in a knife fight by another 13-year-old. That's how it probably should have been presented, so it came off kind of retarded or stupid.
They got it wrong, and to Molly's point, they didn't get it wrong because they made a mistake. They got it wrong because they were trying to push a narrative, a dangerous one, that could end up getting people killed.
You mentioned...
No, narratives don't get people killed. Well, I guess.
That commentary on CNN and MSNBC, let's run that and get some reaction.
What if it were your daughter? What if it were your child? What if it were a member of your family, your neighbor, in a...
I'd be disappointed that my daughter decided to take a fucking knife to someone's throat. If my sister did this at 16, I'd be disappointed in them. You want to actually hear something funny? I do have family that's young, when we were younger, that tried to be violent with each other like that. And I had to stop them physically. Had I not, would have caused some bodily harm. I've been in this situation, okay? It's just so funny. It's so funny. What if it was your daughter? What if it was your daughter being stabbed, dipshit? What would you want the cop to do? I'll just let her get stabbed. Why? Because the woman with the knife could have been my daughter, too. Oh, blow me.
Essentially...
I like her hair, though.
A teenage fight, a schoolyard fight.
I remember fights in even...
That's not a fucking schoolyard fight! I went to a fucking school that ended up being bad and having attempted stabbings and fights like that. You know what happened? The fucking state stepped in. That's not good. That is bad. You want to talk about a culture of violence? That's what you're enabling. What the fuck? Ethical society of police, yeah. Yeah, I agreed. We also needed just an ethical society.
Even high school, or even younger than that, where a kid brought a penknife or something to school, and teachers were able to defuse that, and they didn't have guns.
A penknife is different, and it's probably a different situation. What do you mean by defuse? What, you caught it with them in their locker? Yeah, that happens with kids too, and they bring a gun to school and they put it in the locker. See, that's the problem with school shootings. It's not that they're gun-free zones, it's that we don't have lockers anymore, so they don't put the gun thing in there and we don't do locker checks. That's what it is. I'm joking. It's trivializing it. It's like, oh, it's just a stabbing. It's just a stabbing! What? What? It's just a stab. It's just drunk violence. It's just drunk driving. It's just a shooting. It's just a bombing. It's just a rape. It doesn't work there either, does it? What the fuck? It's mental gymnastics. It is intentional denial of the situation, and it is disgusting to justify a political narrative. That is what's disgusting. It's the same shit every other group does when that happens. It's disgusting. No, I need to get over myself. That's what it is, right? I need to just get over myself. Just get over myself.
Molly, I listened to this and it seems so deeply unserious, but also it's gaslighting. It's trying to make you believe something that is...
That's very true. It is gaslighting, and it's fucking stupid.
At odds with everything that you see in front of you.
So this guy, for the most part, is somewhat reasonable. I'm kind of happy. These two seem a little unself-aware. But we'll see. He is at Fox.
You, isn't it?
There's no comparison between a backyard tussle or getting down with someone in a schoolyard and an attempted murder. And everyone should be able to look at this situation and have thoughtful commentary about how awful it is that there even is a situation where this one girl is attacking another girl, where there are adults involved, where a police officer has...
Yeah, where the fuck were the adults stepping in to stop it? Nowhere. Instead, you got fucking Captain Dumbass fucking my baby getting in on the fucking fight. The only adult there was a fucking cop.
To make that kind of decision, but to just make up ridiculous things like acting like it's normal for two teenagers to try to kill each other, that's not normal.
Yeah, see, that's what upsets me too. And this is why I'm going to do this again. I'm going to generalize the progressives, because the progressives love to make these stupid fucking comments about, like, we're normalizing violence against women. We're normalizing violence against this. We're normalizing violence against brown bodies. What the fuck is that? Knife fights, that's normalizing violence. It's literally normalizing violence. So again, it's like, okay, so is normalizing violence the problem? Or is it something else? What is it? Race baiting? Trying to get the police defunded? Well, what is it? This is a political narrative. That's what pisses me off. They're using the death of a fucking teenager to push their own political narrative, and then trivializing essentially not only her death, but the potential violence towards either bodily harm or death of 2 other fucking individuals. That's disgusting to me. That is disgusting. But again, I just need to get over myself. I'm gonna keep putting that in there. Careful what you type to me. I will do that.
Normal, and if it is normal, there's something wrong with that as well.
Joe, one more thing I wanted to bring up to you. This interesting story from the Washington Examiner.
I like how his hair goes that way. His hair goes that way.
About Politico sending an email, sending a letter to their own writers saying essentially that they cannot use the term crisis when describing the border, despite the fact that the president himself has actually used this word. To me, this seems like a classic example of the media trying to reframe a story that they...
Okay, so... Actually, let's do it. I want to see the other one. So the edit is it's not prejudicial necessarily, that it's obviously hiding information. You know what I mean? And sides do that all the time. Can't think one off the top of my head, but I know Fox has done it several times, where they omit or softly describe a situation to lessen the blow of reality. That's essentially what they're doing. And again, it's not lost on me the hypocrisy of that either, because Fox does it themselves. But that's what they're doing, and it's pathetic, it's gross, it's disgusting, and it's why I don't trust anything. I don't trust any media, pretty much. I look up the video I can, and if it seems suspicious, I try to look it up several times from several sources. Why? Because I want to see if there's some edited, a different perspective. If they do pauses and stuff like that, that's different. But like what I do, I link the sources. You can go watch the video I have. You can go watch all these different things. Grossly represented. White House took...
This Bud Light Seltzer lemonade is packed with lemonade flavor.
Yeah, it even has more flavor than my grandma's lemonade.
Go ahead.
Hi, Jen. Taylor Poplars with Spectrum News. Three quick questions. I'll make them quick. First, has the president been briefed on 16-year-old Micaiah Bryant being shot and killed by police in Columbus, Ohio yesterday? It happened moments before the Chauvin verdict came out.
Yes. I said to you yes, and let me just say, since you gave me the opportunity, the killing of 16-year-old Micaiah Bryant by the Columbus police is tragic. She was a child. We're thinking of her friends and family and the communities that are hurting and grieving her loss. We know that police violence disproportionately impacts Black and Latino people and communities, and that Black women and girls, like Black men and boys, experience higher rates of police violence. We also know that there are particular vulnerabilities that children in foster care like Micaiah face. And her death came, as you noted, just as America was hopeful of a step forward after the traumatic and exhausting trial of Derek Chauvin and the verdict that was reached. So our focus is on working to address systemic racism and implicit bias head-on, and of course to passing laws and legislation that will put much-needed reforms into place at police departments around the country.
But no police reform would have made that situation any better. It only would have involved in more and more violence. You want to do reform? Reform the foster system. Reform other things like that. And there may have been nothing that could have been done that would have, with the same people inserted when they came in, the only thing you could have done is either taken away the police officer's firearm, which then would have allowed Micaiah to stab the woman in pink, and then potentially continue violence towards other people. And not just Micaiah, dipshit daddy wanted to do it too. Who knows if he had a weapon on him, or if other people had other weapons too. And here's the other thing too. I don't think a lot of people realize, not only that, but if the cop hadn't shown up, someone else might have pulled out something. One of the neighbors might have walked out with a shotgun. You want that? Instead of cops coming out doing shit, just some random fucking American with a gun, shooting at whoever they think is doing something. You want that? Because that's what you're asking for. You're asking for people to take matters into their own hands. And that's the funny thing. That's essentially what Micaiah probably thought she was doing. taking matters into her own hands. Instead of dealing with a dispute like an adult or letting the adults deal with the dispute, no, she decided to engage in violence. Well, when you engage in violence, you invite violence. I'm going to quote George Carlin. Maybe if you don't want to get shot, don't go walking around the Middle East with a fucking gun strapped to you. Last I checked, they're not shooting people in Oklahoma, or the fuck the guy was from. Not a good quote. May have missed a few things. But the essence is, you want to go into a violent situation and try to engage in violence, you better expect violence back. And it will be escalated. You know what I mean? And the same would go to that. If it ends up being that Micaiah was living there, and the women came there to, like, start shit, they did bring that on themselves too, and they should be held partially responsible. Because it's mutual combat at that point. But, yeah, no, it's systemic racism. What was it you said they weren't racializing, Bruce? I thought they weren't They're not racializing it? I thought they weren't racializing it. What are they doing then? What are they doing? Explain to me. Again, I'm going to be smug. You say things that I prove wrong. Come on. Can I give you the benefit of the doubt? No. And again, be respectful, Bruce. I'm serious. Like, don't be a dick, please. I don't want people to be harassed. I don't want people to be sent threats or anything stupid like that. I get it. I've gotten it for comments or videos. It's not fun. I don't want anyone to ever experience that. Okay? But one other viewer who's not either a friend of mine or Bruce. God damn it. You know who you're talking. You know who you are. I don't.
The president been briefed on it?
Yes.
Okay. And then also
And again, so here's the thing too. Oh, the president's been briefed on it. Does the president really give a shit? It's like, too, like that one time when Obama, like, weighed in on some, like, professor getting... Does the president really give a shit? He doesn't know the situation. He's the fucking president. He's got fucking Russia to deal with and China. He doesn't give a shit about... I mean, yeah, they're going to make a statement, but that just comes off cold and just meaningless to me. It's performative, which is a new term that's being used a lot, but that's what it is. It's like, oh, we care. You know, she's sitting there reading, the White House does care about the situation, and they're upset that da-da-da-da-da. Are they? If Biden really gave a shit, you know what he'd be doing? He'd be paying for Micaiah's funeral costs. That's what giving a shit means. And I would support, if there is a GoFundMe and you find it, please, Bruce, put it in the description. I am 100% okay with that in the description. If there's like a GoFundMe or a PayPal for Micaiah's funeral costs. Because it's still unfortunate. People should definitely help in tragic times. Even if I pin the blame on herself. Perfect. Posting the 5.
To get another rush to judgment over a deadly police shooting. This is a tragedy. There's no denying that.
Again, look at that stance. Look at that. That is going for a knife.
But Democrats in the media racing to politicize an officer killing 16-year-old Michaela Bryant, who had a knife in her hand and was lunging at another girl. Instead of waiting for all the facts, the White House said this.
She was a child. We're thinking of her friends and family in the communities that are hurting and grieving her loss. We know that police violence disproportionately impacts Black and Latino people in communities, and that Black women and girls, like Black men and boys, experience higher rates of police violence.
And now,
so we literally just watched that video where they said systemic racism, they said the racism thing, and I let it go completely, and it came off as, oh, it's systemic racism and it's bad. We need to do things to change systemic racism. So I don't think Fox misinterpreted her. They cut her off, yeah, and Fox is gonna do that, and just like fucking MSNBC and CNN and all the other ones are gonna do that to any conservative. They're gonna cut them off when it's, you know, like I said, Fox does it too. I literally just spent how long on that one video talking about that? So yeah, it's racialized. I really don't see what your point is here. Explain if I'm missing something. What? Shit. But yeah, that's what I see. Again, it is incredibly unfortunate that someone had to die. Oh wait, let me check. I need... No! Alright. So again, I recognize and understand it is a tragedy that just a person, let alone a young person, lost their life. It is a tragedy that a police officer felt they had to engage in lethal force and now has on their conscience the death of a young person. I recognize the tragedy that whoever Ma'Khia's family and friends are feeling tremendous, indescribable pain right now. Including Captain Dump. That is his nickname. That said, the only way to deny that she was going, just let alone even if she was going for under the gut, she wasn't disarming someone with a knife. She was going in to attack someone with a knife. You can't get around that. You just can't get around that. You can't avoid it saying, well, teenagers do it all the time. You can't. No. Fuck that. And in fact, let's do one more thing. I have a better idea. I'm gonna look up something. I'll use the World Health Organization. Just a moment while I'm bringing it up. Okay. Not as helpful as I thought. And it's the UK. I'm looking for the U. So again, I'm using uniform crime reporting because tables 2019. Helps me. Sorry to any viewers that's taken. Okay. Violent crime. $16. Relation. Property theft. Murder. Relation. Nation. Nation or state. Getting there. Okay. I want you guys to take a look at this. All right. We've got this. This is all agencies in the US, right? So aggravated assault, and we'll also look for murder. Aggravated assault with a knife. Right? So aggravated assault with a knife, what we just saw, is just over 100,000. Murder. Nothing that really helps. 22. Let's see what table 20. murder rate in general. Not what I'm looking for. What we're trying to find is the number of murders. Attempted murder. Yeah. Okay, we'll just say that. So we've got aggravated assault. Again, very different from murder. Fuck it, we'll just do California. California's a good representative of everything, right? Not really. This is why you do research beforehand, kids. Alright, but we know it's 118,000 aggravated assault. Okay. Most deadliest cities, don't give a shit. Murder victim by weapon. I don't know if this is a trusted source. Ooh, cutting and stabbing. That's make me a little. All the guns are consistent. About 10,000 each year. Really bad my birth year. Gosh, that's terrible. A bad year when I was born. Cutting or stabbing, always about a third, or not a third, like about a quarter to a fifth. You know what I mean? Number of assaults by weapon. So assaults are pretty much, so here's the and this is why damn, I hate this guy. So these are aggravated assaults, which has been about 118,000, and then you could essentially say that, okay, well, the other people are those that don't die. Well, you know, it's interesting. Only about 10,000 people die with that. So your point now doesn't matter. Because if 180,000 people are assaulted with firearms and don't die, we can go back to that too. Let's go back to that FBI shit, right? FBI crime stats. I think it was table 21. Table 19. Table 19. Aggravated assault. Look at that. 180,000 versus 118,000. And at worst, this was like what? 10,000 people died. So 10,000 versus like 1,500 to 2,000. While it's still a greater likelihood, not really that relevant, is it? Let's do some, excuse me, let's do some math here. Let's do the calculator out. Just to prove a point. Alright, so we'll just say 10,000 out of 186,000. That is a rate of 0.05. And then let's do 1,500 out of 118,000. Well, it's definitely, like I said, about a fifth the rate. There's still less than 1% likelihood that you're going to die. What is that? Your argument's invalid. Because aggravated assaults are pretty much when people survive. Now you want to look at this. Let's look at this. Here's the best one. Survival rate of stab victims. So the mortality rate of a gunshot wound to the chest varies from 14 to 36%. Mortality rate of our patient's gunshots wound to the heart. Stab wound again, it's about, it's not as lethal, but it's still lethal. University, that's 9. The study publishes that of the 2,961 were transported by EMS. That overall mortality rate was 27%. Maybe both groups had signs of life on delivery to the hospital, meaning they were alive by the time they got there, or at least were hanging on a thread. A third of the patients with gunshot wounds died, compared with 7.7% of stab wounds. So again, about 1/5 the lethality, but still lethal. That's the point. Still lethal. Should a cop gamble on that, about a 10% lethality rate, and say, it'll be fine? Especially because that's chest wounds. We're talking neck wounds. You get shot or stabbed in the neck, your chances of dying go up. And again, I admitted, you're not as likely to die as by a gun, as by a knife as by a gun. Points invalid. From what I see. Because what you're then also saying, and this is why the point's really invalid, from what I'm saying. Someone willing to stab someone, willing to cause harm, and taking the risk, I'm gonna kill them. Someone who pulls a gun on someone, opens fire, is willing to kill them. So it doesn't matter the mortality rate. Because you could be like, oh, well, they got like a third. Oh, they have a 66 or 70% likelihood of living if they get shot. They have a 90% chance of living if they get stabbed. Doesn't mean you don't try. Because that's if everything goes perfect. That's if they're alive when they're at the hospital. A fatal neck stab, they may not make it to the fucking... And again, the studies just show that the argument for knives pretty much works for the argument for guns. I'm not saying that Bruce is necessarily against guns, but it's just like, essentially all we've done now is like, okay, so we're minimizing violence, so we're just saying it doesn't matter. Well, then the shooting doesn't matter either. Why are you mad that she got shot? She had a 66% chance of living. She was shot in the chest. See? Doesn't matter. Anyway. Thank you, though, for all the questions, Bruce. Again, I really do appreciate your viewership and, you know, throwing your hat into the ring. A lot of people don't want to talk about this in what I feel is an honest way. A lot of people don't want to respectfully challenge. And again, all the frustration, anger, and that, even the smugness. I mean no disrespect to Bruce, because again, I appreciate the time to ask these questions, to think out and ask these questions. What I mean, and this is no just simple comment. I mean, look at that. Whoop, look at that. That's someone taking the time to ask questions, even if I don't agree with all of the questions or think some of them come off a little bit like I did, kind of smuggish. That's still time, and this is what we need to do. We need to encourage discourse, even if there is a little bit of heat off our tongues. It's better than ignoring each other. It's better than, you know what I mean? Because we won't get to better solutions. We won't get to closer to the truth without actually talking, without listening. And that's the biggest thing. Listening. Ask questions. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? And see that. What do you mean by that? That's what this is. Are you assuming? What do you mean by that? See? Those are the questions. You need to people need to do that more. And I do appreciate that Bruce does. Again, you know, don't be a dick. Be respectful. And hopefully that answered the questions. Again, I know I came off a bit smug, and I definitely came off heated. Because I am genuinely upset that people seem to be willfully ignoring the fact that this is an attempted ending of someone else's life, or just minimum an attempted bringing of severe bodily harm to someone else, and that just being ignored, and then even being justified because of things like, oh well, you know, knife fights happen all the time. That bugs me. That's hate to use these terms, but it's minimizing violence. It's normalizing violence. That's saying that's okay. It's okay that she tried to stab them. It's making excuses for someone who doesn't need excuses, because it's the action's inexcusable. Going at someone with the knife, unless they're going at you with something to try to kill you in the same moment or immediately prior, and we didn't see that, there's a problem. Now if it comes out there's an alternate view and it shows that the pink woman, while the cop was looking away, went at her with the knife and she grabbed it, well, now it's mutual combat and there's a little bit more context to the story. But if it ends up being, you know, that's the other thing. She took the knife away and then responded with trying to stab back. But it didn't look like that's the case. We'll see. We'll see when more information comes out. But based off everything I see, this was a justified shooting. It's a tragedy that Makai is dead, but she brought it on herself. And 2 lives were saved with that shooting. And that's what I take away from it. So thanks to you for those watching, for those who comment. Bruce, thanks for your questions and comments and the link so I could look up some other stuff, joining the conversation. Please continue the conversation. If you have anything else to ask, you want any critiques, whatever, please. Yeah, just use your brain.